Good day, everyone, and welcome to The Literary Machine. I'm your host, K.O. Lin. If you're unfamiliar with this podcast, I dive into stories of popular media and analyze how effective I think the storytelling is. Well, we're here. This is the last episode of Season 1. Thank you for joining me on the journey of this podcast so far. I also want to thank those of you who dropped in on these Subnautica live streams for some chats. It's been a lot of fun. If you're interested in the video game live streams, check out the Literary Machine YouTube channel. Links will be below. Today, we're going to talk about the movie The Creator, the 2023 sci-fi thriller. This stars John David Washington as the lead protagonist. I knew I'd seen this guy before and had a difficult time placing him, but as it turns out, he was the lead in The Black Klansman, which is a fantastic film. He and Adam Driver were absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I doubt that it's a movie that will make it onto this podcast, especially since I have no experience translating real events to story format, which is very tricky to do. There have been some social problems with that, like Disney's Pocahontas. But let's move on. Given that AI has been a big topic of late, I considered briefly generating an AI summary of this movie and reading it into the podcast. However, I decided against that because I don't want the integrity of this podcast damaged. These are pure, moderately filtered thoughts straight from me. No AI. I speak much more heavily on this topic at the end of this podcast if you're interested. Moving on. With every episode, I try to give a broad overview of the story. The movie starts by giving us a brief rundown of how AI integrated with society, eventually evolving into robots with human brains. They act like humans and in some cases wear the faces of humans, but they're robots. Apparently, no good movie about the insidious encroach of AI can begin without Los Angeles getting cratered by a nuke. Given the current rise in AI technology today, I feel like this should serve as a warning to all Angelinos that they should probably consider moving elsewhere. Anyway, the U.S. declares war on New Asia, who they claim nuked LA, but the biggest reason is that the U.S. wants to eliminate the use of AI. In order to win the war, the U.S. builds a spaceship called the Nomad. It hovers above the atmosphere and sends down bombs when the U.S. feels like destroying something with, the flimsiest of evidence and no regard for innocent life. The story starts with the main protagonist, Joshua, canoodling with his lady love, Maya, who happens to be heavily pregnant with their first child. Turns out, he's a spy for the U.S., and his mission was to get close to Maya. Dishonor. Dishonor on him. Dishonor on his cow. Anyway, the U.S. decides to strike because they're looking for the leader of AI, Nirmata. Maya abandons Joshua and flees aboard a boat. Joshua runs after her. Nomad sends a bomb into the ocean near Maya's boat, and there's a whiteout. She's presumed dead, and here we have the protagonist's motivation. Despite the fact that she was only supposed to be a, quote, job, unquote, to Joshua, he fell in love with her. He exists in a deep depression, mourning the life he thought he was going to have. He serves as part of the cleaning crew for the radiation zone in Los Angeles. Naturally, the military decide they're not done with him and show him evidence that Maya is alive. You show us Nirmata's laboratory where they're keeping their super secret weapon and we'll allow you to have your wife back. Let's forget that she's probably still pissed with Joshua. He signs on to do the mission. They sneak in, but there's trouble almost immediately. The Chinese cops are called in, there's a firefight, everyone dies, Joshua gets into the secret lab and finds a robot child that is roughly the age his own child would have been if it had lived. Anyway, this is unique because while there are plenty of adult robots with human faces, there's never been a child robot. Also, robots with human faces are known as simulants. Joshua takes his child on a whirlwind journey through China as he looks for evidence of his wife being alive. As far as twist goes, the movie somewhat sidesteps it. The robot child, Alfie, is not his child with Maya, but while their child was in the womb, she made a scan of it and built a robot version. So it's effectively his child, just the robot version of her. Also, this child was created to control the power field around all electronics, turning them off and on or controlling them at her whim. As she gets older, the range of our powers will grow, and she's expected to be able to just take out the Nomad. While I did find this movie pretty entertaining and heartfelt at times, it's a bit of a leaky boat, full of holes. It starts out with a complex story where blame for the war is assigned on both sides, but as the story progresses, it falls very firmly in the pro-AI camp. Joshua is told by a simulant, Ken Wanatabi, gosh, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, that Los Angeles getting nuked was a result of human error. He doesn't say whose error, just human error, but then says that if New Asia won the war, nothing would happen to the West because New Asia doesn't care if the West likes AI or not. This is framed as the truth because Ken Wanatabi is speaking it, and we like him. The movie takes what appears to be a complex setup on its face and chips away at all the nuance until it was good AI and anti-AI bad, which makes it boring and a little bit predictable. They could have easily done this movie and kept the nuance. The reason why we're pulled into the story is because the protagonist struggles. This machine child, Alfie, is his child. We could just as easily have bought into the narrative that he chose the AI side simply because his child was on that side. And that would be a perfectly understandable reason. After all, we as human beings don't think too kindly on parents who shun their children for petty reasons. Apart from breaking things down into a black and white dichotomy, the AI situation in New Asia doesn't make a whole lot of sense. From what I can tell, their investment in AI is largely around the simulants, making robot people who are just as authentic as their loved ones. It even shows them holding a funeral for a simulant, and that makes no sense. They're robots. Isn't half the beauty of them being robots means that you can repair them? Yes, there are going to be some that are going to be damaged beyond repair, but their personality is entirely within a chip. You could even take that chip out and simply put it in a new body. Yet we never see this. When a robot dies, they just leave them dead and bury them. Except Ken Wanatabi. His robot is forever. One could argue that perhaps they feel the simulants are so close to humans that they should have only one life and be treated the same. Or it could be argued that dying and then putting them into a new body is so traumatizing that it would be cruel. But we don't know this. This is purely speculation on why they don't simply repair their robots. If this is the sort of thing that they wanted us to believe, it needs to be spelled out. There simply isn't enough information for us to adequately fill in the holes. Furthermore, as we're seeing the encroachment of the likes of ChatGPT and Gemini and a whole host of other stupid AI generative art and text, AI isn't about replicating human intelligence. There is a broad swath of tools that fall under the AI definition. And yet, the West makes better use of these AI tools than New Asia. The Nomad and their giant tank-like vehicles have auto-targeting features. That's AI. They have robots purpose-built as bombs to act like that Uruk-hai from Two Towers, who had the torch that blew up Helm's Deep. As far as I can tell, New Asia only cares about the simulant parts of the AI, which strikes me as dumb and limiting. Have they reached a point in their society where they think that AI can only be simulants, and all other aspects of AI, which isn't sentient, is forbidden? Who knows? The movie doesn't go out of its way to let us know. It wants you to accept and root for the society that integrates AI like it's a citizen, but it never actually delves below the surface level of what the culture for such a society might look like. Frankly, they really needed to do a lot more to expand upon their world building. Another bizarre feature of New Asia's love of AI is that they have campaigns saying, "Donate to the cause. Have your face scanned today." So there are literally multiple copies of simulants with the same face, including presumably the human person who donated their face to be scanned, running around in this world. Joshua sees multiple simulants who look like his wife. It's really creepy. Another instance of this is we see a copy simulant with a face that gets killed, and then later a new cop shows up wearing the exact same face. I don't know why people wouldn't find this very weird. What is the purpose of having multiple people with the same face running around? This just sounds confusing. Is it meant to be deliberately confusing to muddy up Western intelligence? I would be disturbed about having multiple robots with my face running around. They're just like humans, which means they can have similar human impulses. A simulant can be made to trash someone's reputation. Ugh, gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. I was thinking that they'd take a scan of a person and run it through some randomization program with a whole bunch of other face scans and create a person with whole new features. You know, a bit like how Axe, the Andalite from the Animorphs, sampled the DNA of all of his human friends and then morphed into some weird amalgamation of their various features. It sounds off-putting, but by all accounts, it did the job. Unfortunately, there's just more that's wrong with the creator than is right with it. Beyond the relevant world building that was desperately needed to shore up some of the weaker parts of the story, there are just straight plot holes. Joshua himself is a plot hole. To start the story, he's an undercover Western agent, and he's black. Under normal circumstances, his skin color wouldn't mean anything, but he's in New Asia. The shots that we see of New Asia shows that the vast majority of people are of Chinese descent. A black guy just sticks out. A white guy sticks out. John David Washington is a fantastic actor, and he does a wonderful job in this movie. I have no complaints about the way he conducted his character. But I can't help but wonder if this story would have made more sense if an Asian man had been the main protagonist. At one point, he's literally running around in the city with his hood down. There are wanted posters of his face and Alfie's face. How he didn't cause a riot wherever he went is, frankly, a massive plot hole. He would have had a hell of a time going anywhere without immediately being caught. This movie is literally about a massive ideological war. An English-speaking Westerner should have been looked upon with suspicion. And rounding back to the uses of AI, how does New Asia not have a bunch of security checkpoints that uses AI technology to scan people and their vitals? I'm thinking like Minority Report, where people's eyes are constantly getting scanned so that ads can be targeted to that person specifically, and the cops use it to find Tom Cruise almost immediately. It shows a place of significant technological ability, but only shows the extent of the advancements in the manufacturing of simulants or bots, which just seems so limiting given everything we see from the West. The most egregious plot hole happens at one point when the West, or should I say the Americans, are attacking a village, and Alfie steps up to stop one of the suicide bots that they send down. She can control machines, so she turns off the bomb. There's a moment of quiet where things seem to be calming down, and then an American soldier comes out of nowhere and shoots Alfie in the chest. Panic ensues. The suicide bomb bot rearms itself, and Joshua has to grab Alfie and run to save her. Ken Wanatabi then says, "You must take her to Mother to heal her." Alfie is wrapped up in a blanket, and Joshua carries her to the next temple where Mother is. Mother is, of course, Nirmata, aka Joshua's long-lost wife. Though by this point he has developed open affection for the child, his main goal is still to see his wife once again. Alfie is taken from him when he reaches the next point, and then he's guided toward a temple where we see Joshua's wife laid up in a hospital bed in a coma, and Alfie's curled up next to her. Alfie's gunshot to the chest is casually brushed aside. Some of you might be thinking, oh, well, the next step is to heal Alfie. No, she's already healed. There's a confrontation in the temple, and Joshua scoops up Alfie and runs some more. This gap is just weird. Maybe the storytellers were thinking, of course Alfie gets healed. That's the natural assumption of the audience, and we can just slide right by it. Why do we need to confirm it? Because you put extra emphasis on it? This was an intense situation which was played up for drama, and then it's not even really resolved. Just hastily glossed over, like you failed to build a step in the staircase. The end is just confusing. The actions the characters take are very deliberate to produce a specific ending. So, Alfie and Joshua are on the Nomad to destroy it. Joshua sets a bomb on a missile within the Nomad, and Alfie has to power down the station so that Joshua can do this. However, once the bomb is set and they need to find each other again, things get a little weird. Alfie runs into a bunch of simulants that are just bagged up like they're corpses in a mortuary, except they're standing. Alfie finds a simulant exactly like Maya, her mom and Joshua's wife. She drags the simulant into a cornfield within Nomad and sticks her mom's memory chip in her to wake her up. Only it takes too long, and Alfie eventually abandons the simulant. Why is the simulant here? Specifically, why is there a simulant of Maya on the Nomad? Of course, the West have simulants because when it comes to technology, even stuff that we're morally opposed to, of course we still have parts of it so as not to fall behind, I suppose. But why does the simulant have Maya's face? Were they going to use it as a double agent at some point? Just weird. At this point, Josh was almost asphyxiated by the vacuum of space and is struggling. This 8-year-old child manages to drag Josh to the escape pod. Look, maybe that part can be put down to robot strength. That's not the weird part. But Alfie leaves Joshua to get the escape pod ready. When it opens, Alfie goes in and gets seated and does nothing with Joshua. Just leaves him out there to find his own way on board. Joshua is still trying to recover and get to his feet. The Americans are able to take control of the escape pod class and attack Alfie. Joshua saves her again, but then the door shuts off between them. Of course. They try briefly to get it open, but Nomad is blowing up, so Josh triggers the escape pod to eject and sends Alfie back down to Earth. Before Joshua dies, he's wandering Nomad, and of course, he comes across the Maya simulant with the right memory chip. She runs into his arms, they share a kiss, they die. Let's forget again, Maya's last memory of Joshua is his hiding that he was a secret agent from her, therefore betraying her. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that the motions made to deliver a beautiful, tragic ending is incredibly ham-fisted. You can basically see the puppeteer pulling the strings to get the characters to fulfill the ending the writers have planned, rather than it playing out naturally. This is storytelling. Someone is always pulling the strings. The art and crafting part of the storytelling is making those strings look invisible to the engager's eye. For the most part, professional level stories, Hollywood movies, books, video games, etc. do a good job of hiding these strings. However, it can be difficult to maintain a certain level of invisibility, especially when it's the ending. At the climax of the film, people are expecting something big and exciting, something memorable. The likes of Hollywood trying to trump itself time after time means some of those endings are destined to fall a little bit flat. I believe this is one of those times. It wasn't horrendous by any means, just a bit naked. Under normal circumstances, I like to be constructive in my criticisms. How could they have made this better? In general, this is a story that needs to be redone from the ground up, starting with the world building. AI integration into society needs to be a lot more fleshed out. There needs to be some cultural implications and some pros and cons. Given the current friction that society has with robots, do we see robots winning art awards? Maybe that's a good reason why we don't like AI in the West. Maybe not. Just adding more nuance, I think, would have made this vastly more interesting. To specifically address how they might have made the ending more natural, maybe don't have Alfie save Joshua. Maybe Alfie and Joshua agree to a meeting point, but because surviving space was a lot more difficult for Joshua, Alfie misses him. Or the Americans are bound to have robots on board. We saw a bunch of simulants already. Why not have those robots activate, then attack Alfie, which means Joshua has to swoop in and save her. Alfie runs over to the escape pod and dives in, but the robots grab Joshua again and the escape pod door closes and locks before he can reach it. That's a much more natural way to separate the two and make sure that Josh pays the price for his tragic sacrifice. After all of this, is there anything redeeming about the creator? I mean, sure, it was a good film. Good as in entertaining. I really did feel like the premise had the germ of a really good story in there. They simply made some decisions that melted away the level of complexity and made it a good people versus bad people premise. By virtue of doing that, it made it less interesting. The designs of the simulants and how they fit into the world was, I thought, pretty well done. It's not like the movie doesn't address at all how the simulants would affect our culture. It's just a bit surface level. What they do delve into is curious and intriguing. I'm a fantasy fan. I enjoy a fair amount of world building, potentially more than your average audience. So while I was not appeased by it, others might be. This is a story where there was a real danger of the characters engaging in the domino effect of stupidity. If you're not sure what that is, it's basically where one character makes a stupid decision and then another character makes a similarly stupid decision to keep the plot going. It did manage to avoid that. The bad guys suffer a little bit more from the domino effect of stupidity, but it's pretty short-lived. Maybe 2 stupid decisions. A domino effect really needs a chain of about 3 or more. Otherwise, the characters do act wisely in their motivations and their knowledge base. The actors all did an excellent job, including the child actor for Alfie. I have no complaints about any of the performances. Again, John David Washington and Ken Watanabe are wonderful in their respective roles. I can also appreciate that the storytellers took a different tack with Joshua's character. While he's a tough dude and clearly has gumption, he's not afraid to be tender and soft when he needs to be. He's also seriously flawed and selfish, but those are arguably understandable in light of the losses that he suffered. His pregnant wife ending up in a brain-dead coma and his unborn child dying weeks before birth. The world is currently stuck in a trend of severe warriors showing a tender and loving side to the children that they are guarding. First, Joel with Ellie from The Last of Us, then Din and Grogu from The Mandalorian, and now Joshua and Alfie. I'm not going to criticize it. I hope it doesn't get too stuck, but so far, I have greatly enjoyed the properties that involve this trope. The main reason I engage with stories is to fall in love with the characters. Another large reason is escapism, but becoming invested with the characters is the single biggest reason. I did not hate any single character in this film, at least not the ones with any notable amount of screen time. I even enjoyed the bad guys. They weren't just propagandized minions, just following orders. They did believe in their cause. They used some heinous methods to push their agenda. They also weren't evil to be evil, maybe some were. We don't get enough backstory on most of them. But there is one soldier who shared her pain with Joshua about her sons being killed by falling into some traps with the enemy. Those on the pro-AI side aren't saints either, though. But the movie goes out of its way later to paint them as such. My feelings about the movie aren't negative, they're mostly neutral. I just couldn't find a whole lot of especially good parts to balance out the flaws that I saw. The visuals were cool. The story execution wasn't horrendous or anything. It was an enjoyable flick if you're not looking for anything too deep. It might even scratch a sci-fi action-adventure itch. Now, I am going to use this particular podcast to vent my feelings about the encroachment of AI into our lives. This AI is not anything close to replicating humans in every facet, but it's another step in a tall staircase that will get us there. Given that I am a writer and now content creator, I am displeased with the likes of ChatGPT, Gemini, and all the other text and image generating spin-offs. I'll admit, when it first started exploding in the summer of 2023, I was a bit more leery, but the model has already fallen apart at the seams because people can't help but fill it full of useless junk, which, fine by me. I read an article on The Verge with the headline, "The Great Fiction of AI" by Josh Dziza. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You can find the link in the description below. The article takes a more neutral approach to AI text generators, featuring writers who swear by the use of AI as a springboard and others who swear it off altogether. It shows the pros of AI and even delves into the possibility of it being used too much like a crutch. I highly recommend the article. I certainly fall quite a bit more on the anti-AI side of things. I write because I love to write. Do I love every aspect of writing? No, but I do recognize the more unpleasant aspects of writing as a teaching moment. There's always something new to learn. In my personal philosophy toward writing, the best way to learn is to often just bulldoze through the messy parts because cleanup can happen in editing. I will never use AI text generation in the creation of my fiction. Will I use it for these podcast episodes? I kind of already spoke above, but yeah, doubtful. I want my intellectual property to be my own. Those are the key words, aren't they? Intellectual property. The biggest problem with these text and image generating services is that they scrape the wider internet of content and artistry that it did not produce and spits it back out masquerading as original work, which is infuriating. If I were to use ChatGPT or whichever program for my stories, it's not isolated for me and tuned to my writing style. It's open to the wider internet to exploit my own intellectual property before I even have a chance of publishing it. In that respect, I think anyone who is not thinking about their intellectual property that they may intend to publish is a fool for feeding it into these machines. I sincerely hope that our lawmakers, who are woefully behind on the regulation of technology, hurry up and take notice before AI can do permanent damage. At the very least, the Writers Guild of America managed to win some AI protection in the contract terms at the end of their latest strike. But this is not the end. To those who do enjoy using AI text generative and image generators, that tool may be too good to be true. Right now, you're the hand that's feeding it, but it will bite you. It's still the creation of tech entrepreneurs looking to grind profit for their capitalist machine, and they aren't going to care about who they might throw under the bus to get it. Well, that's been an interesting foray into a noteworthy topic. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Literary Machine. If you did, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Season 2 will be coming out in 2025. In the meantime, I encourage you to check out my live streams on YouTube, where we cover a range of topics, but mostly video game stories. I plan to play the likes of Little Nightmares, the Tomb Raider reboot, Alien Isolation, Final Fantasy X, and more. Come join us. This is K.O. Lin, signing out.